Hi class, this is course 2, lesson 30, and we are going to talk about common denominators, adding and subtracting fractions with common denominators. And so you do not need to write this part down here, but this is just information only. Objectives for today's lesson: you need to be able to rename fractions to have common denominators, you need to be able to compare fractions with different denominators, and you need to be able to add and subtract fractions with different denominators. So that's what we're going to do today. Renaming fractions to have common denominators. We've done this a lot of times. This should just be a refresher for you. But if I want them to have common denominators, the least common denominator, or LCD, is the same as the least common multiple. Okay, so we'll get into this. This example is not going to be that difficult, but down in a couple more slides, we'll talk about how we can use the prime factorization in the Venn diagram, just like we do when we find least common multiple. Okay, so take a look at these two fractions, 2/3 and 1/4. If I want to have common denominators, I need to find a multiple of 3 and a multiple of 4, and hopefully it's the smallest one. But I know that I can use 12, so I can make equivalent fractions with the denominator 12, and I'm going to work backwards here on the 1/4 side. But what would I multiply times 3 to get 12? Multiply times 4, so multiply the 2 times 4 as well, giving me 8/12. And in the fraction 1/4, I would multiply times 3, so I need to multiply the numerator times 3 as well, which gives me 3/12. Okay, so great. So now that I have common denominators, I can add them, I can subtract them, but I can also compare them. So if I was asked to compare 2/3 and 1/4, there's not a lot I can do with that, because I don't know, they're not equal sizes. Okay, so while 2 looks like it's more, it may not really be. So you need to get a common denominator so you can compare them. So we'll just write down, we did all this work up here, so this problem is really 8/12 compared to 3/12. Now you can insert a comparison symbol so that you can show that 2/3 is really bigger than 1/4, because I have 8 out of the 12 pieces of pizza, or I have 3 out of the 12 pieces of pizza, or whatever you want to imagine. Having 8 out of 12 is more than having 3 out of 12. Okay, so what else can we do? Well, we can add and subtract, and when we're dealing with fractions and we're dealing with adding and subtracting, we always get common denominators first. Okay, here's another example. I have 5/6 plus 3/4. I have to get a common denominator because I can tell that 6 and 4 are not the same number. So I need to think about my multiples of 6 and my multiples of 4. So if I make a list, 6, 12, 18, and I make a list of my multiples of 4, 4, 8, 12. Oh, look at that, 12. Now maybe you can look at this and say, oh, it's 12. But if you can't, either make a list or use the prime factorization example we'll get to in a minute. So I need to write equivalent fractions. So 5/6 is going to equal a fraction with a 12 in the denominator. And you know that you'd multiply by 2, so you'd get 10/12. 3/4 with a denominator of 12 would be times 3 times 3, so this is 9/12. Now I need to add these. So 10/12 plus 9/12 becomes 19/12. Now remember that the denominator stays the same. Okay, now don't confuse that with having to get a common denominator. Once you have the denominator where they're the same, you don't change it when you add. Okay, we have more pieces, but they're still all the same size. Now 19/12 is improper, so you need to change that. So divide 19 by 12, you get 1 and 7/12. Okay, so the sum of 5/6 and 3/4 is 1 and 7/12. Okay, now subtracting. These are fractions, but they're mixed numbers. So what do you do first? Common denominator. We are subtracting, so we need to do this extra step. So look at your denominators. Right now they are 3 and 6. Hopefully you can tell that if you multiply 3 times 2 you get 6, so there's not a lot of work we need to do here. So this problem is 8 and 2/3. Let's see what the fraction part of 2/3 would have to be what with a 6. So this would be times 2, this would be times 2. So I really have, I'm going to write over here, 8 and 4/6 minus 5 and 1/6 equals 4 minus 1. I can do that so I don't have to borrow or anything. So 4 minus 1 is 3. Keep the denominator. 8 minus 5, 3. Now look at this answer, and hopefully you say, whoa, that's not acceptable, because you can reduce. 3 and 6 have a common factor of 3, so divide both 3 and 6 by 3 and you end up with 3 and 1/2. So the difference between 8 and 2/3 and 5 and 1/6 is 3 and 1/2. Okay, now remember that LCD, least common denominator, is the same thing as your LCM, your least common multiple, and you can use prime factorization to find that, because it might be difficult to find the denominator that they have in common when you're talking about 24 and 32. So off to the side on your paper, work out the prime factorization of 24. Remember, we're doing this to get down to the prime factors. And then we need to work on 32 as well. And 32 would be 8 times 4, 4 times 2, and 4 would be 2 and 2. And this 2 stays, and this becomes 2 and 2. Okay, so now remember how you work this out with the prime factorization? Whatever they have in common goes in the middle, because this is the 24 circle and this is the 32 circle. So what do they have in common? They have a 2, so we're going to write 1, 2. Let's see, they have another 2, so we'll put another 2 in here. They have another 2, and that's it. So now remember, this is the 24 circle, so what number do I need to put out here? 3, because that didn't get used yet. And I need 2 2's in the 32 circle. So what is your least common multiple or your least common denominator? We need to multiply all these. So what is 3 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2? Okay, well remember that this right here is really 32. So what is 32 times 3? 32 times 3 is 96. So your common denominator is 96. So what, I'm going to go back up here. If I need a fraction that used to have a denominator of 24 and now has a denominator of 96, I need to take 24 times what number? Okay, so again, look at your Venn diagram, because this circle over here is 24. So you can exclude all these numbers. What do you have to multiply it by? So what is not in the 24 circle would be times 4. So this is times 4, and this is times 4. So 7/24 is the same thing as 28/96. Now 32, we just did this, 32 times 3. So 5/32 with the denominator of 96, you multiply times 3, and you get 15/96. So I'm going to take these numbers, 28/96 and 15/96, and we still need to subtract them. So 28/96 minus 15/96. Again, leave the denominator, 96. What is 28 minus 15? That should be 13. Okay? That should be your answer. Now, the only 13 is prime, so the only way that you would have to simplify is if 96 were divisible by 13. And I don't think it is. 13 times 7 is 2191. So no, I got close, but I can't do it. So 1396 is your answer. So now hopefully a lot of this was review, but at this point I hope that you can say, I can rename fractions to have common denominators. I know how to compare fractions with different denominators, and I can add and subtract fractions with different denominators. If you have questions about any of those, please let me know. Until then, I will see you in class.